Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about motherhood identity crisis. I think this is a very big topic for a lot of moms because you try to figure out who you are now that you're a mom. And oftentimes we tend to let that take over and we identify as only moms, even though maybe we don't really want to. And you are more than just a mom. So, that
Yeah.
said, we have Rebecca Olson, who is going to start off with sharing a little bit about herself. And if you could also tell us what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I went through my own version of the motherhood identity crisis when my daughter was born almost 12 years ago at this point. And it's that moment when you kind of go, "Ooh, the who the heck am I? What do I really want now that I'm a mom?" And ultimately, I know we're going to get more into that story, but ultimately that moment led me into some pretty deep exploration that led me to become a coach. And here I am today, about a decade later, really helping women sort through this very same moment of confusion and finding clarity around who they are, what they really want, what they want out of their career, if they want a career, answering all of those big questions that kind of sends us off in this trajectory in life. So I'm excited to talk more about it.
Yeah. I think it's very relatable for every mom out there, right? To be like
Yeah.
trying to discover who are you? What identifies you outside of just being a mom? So let's go ahead and dive straight into it. What does identity crisis and motherhood really mean? And why do
Yeah.
so many moms go through this?
The way I oftentimes describe the identity crisis, and now having gone through it myself, I didn't realize it at the time. This isn't something that I think a lot of us even recognize as happening, right? But now that I have had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with women out there, I kind of categorize it whenever I hear, "Who am I?" I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I'm not sure if I want to be doing the same thing I'm doing right now. Any flavor of those types of questions kind of sends the alarms in my mind that goes, "Oh, we're in the middle of an identity crisis. Like it's time to kind of sort through and answer some of these questions." And I think it happens for so many of us because and on some level I'd probably say all of us, it just looks kind of different for each of us, but when we it happens to us because these kind of life altering moments, there's several of them that we have throughout our life. They're moments of like pause and recalibration. And so I think our brain is trying to ultimately decide, like, are we still wanting to be doing what we're doing right now? Is the path that we're on going to lead us to not have any regrets, right? So I think our kind of subconscious is trying to sort out, like, hey, are we really living life the way that we want to live? And motherhood is just one of those moments that we are combining, big shift in life plus hormones plus rhythm changes plus sleep changes and time changes and all the things that are kind of changing in this moment. It becomes a natural time for us to go, "Hey, hold on a second. Who am I really? What do I really want? Is this really the path that I really want to be on?" I remember for me, at least when I was watching my little infant, my now I can't she's like 5'4" now, I can't even believe that. But when she was really little, every couple of weeks I'm changing out clothes in her dresser, right? She's growing like nothing else. And the experience of time really, really shifted for me where I realized how short time really is. And I'm watching these, major milestones in her growth happen, month after month after month. And internally, I'm going, my gosh, like time is so short. I don't want to be wasting any of this. Like, am I really doing what I really want to be doing? Am I living life the way I want? And so thus kind of began that soul searching path that I went on and I and so many other women go on.
Oh my gosh, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my daughter in her 90, and I'm like, this is supposed to be a 3 to 6 month old, and she's
I
not
know.
even 5 months and it doesn't fit.
So many clothes you never get to put on them.
I know. Well, let's talk a little bit about how the role and the expectation of motherhood tends to collide or crash with who we were before we became parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we become parents, we're all in some sort of career and some sort of job path that we're in at that time. Generally speaking, for a lot of us, it's a big part of who we are. We're kind of driven towards the success of that, motivated. For many of us, we have that ambition to climb the ladder, to do more, to kind of move our way up. And that's sort of the pace I find of our career path when we think about work. But motherhood is like a totally different pace. It is a slower, it is about being present, it is about kind of more nurturing and being in that sort of space. So while career is like forward trajectory, like motherhood is this like not it's not like pulling you back, but it's this like very present trajectory. And I think those two paces really do collide for us, particularly for women that would describe themselves as having been very career focused or career driven prior to motherhood. Motherhood is like a jarring pace of life shift that happens, that where trying to figure out how to navigate which pace you're supposed to be on at any given time feels really, really challenging to do all of a sudden. Like it happens instantaneously, right? When the baby arrives, but our body and our mind and our rhythms and our goals, they don't change instantaneously. So there's a lot of confusion that happens during this time. That's, I think, all kind of a part of this identity crisis that hits us.
So true, especially if you have this kind of goal in mind, but now you don't have as much time to devote to certain things or certain activities or certain hobbies, right? You kind of have to
Absolutely.
reconsider, well, one, your priorities, which is obviously keeping this little one alive, but then secondary to that is, are you just going to fully and solely focus on being a parent, or can you also be
Yeah.
someone else?
Yeah, yeah. And so many of the women that come to me kind of struggling with this identity crisis and seeking some support in it, that's a very common kind of sign that I hear, is this wondering, do I just want to be a stay-at-home mom for a while? Like, do I just want to take a break from my career path or not? And oftentimes I kind of lead them down a path of questioning that that is asking them, if you are able to really figure out how to prioritize better at work, to hold to your boundaries, to find a better pace in balance in kind of work and life, would you still do you still think you'd be wondering if you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom? And the answer to that question usually leads us down one of two paths, right? If the answer is, "Oh, no, I don't think so. I think if I could like figure out how to handle both, like I would definitely want to do that." Okay, great. We have a work-life balance problem, right? We don't have that's what we need to start focusing on. That's what we need to fix. If the answer is, I think maybe I still would. Like I think I've always wanted to maybe be home with my kids for a while. It's like, "Oh, great. Now we have more of a like direction and path of life conversation that we need to go down to start sorting through that." And oftentimes it's a combination of both, obviously, but it really does. There's kind of two buckets of women I have found that try to get through this motherhood identity crisis and figure out what they want on the other side.
I would love to talk about some of those signs
Yeah.
as far as moms being able to identify that they are struggling with this identity.
Yeah, so I just named one, right? It's like that it's almost like thinking about or dreaming about being a stay-at-home mom and you're working, right? That's a big one. And kind of what you're dreaming about in that is a good clue that there is sort of this identity crisis going on where you're not really sure what you want and who you are and where you want your focus and goals to be. Another one I find is that if you feel like you are failing at everything. You get to the end of the day, you did your best at work, you showed up as a mom, and it doesn't really matter what you do. You're just failing at it, right? And you can't give either one your best and you don't even know how to do that anymore, right? That's oftentimes a sign of like stopping and recalibration to get through this sort of crisis moment is really important. Another one is like I think resentfulness often comes through the motherhood identity moment, right? You could be resenting work for sure for taking you away from your baby, but you could also be kind of resenting being a mom at times and not having time for yourself and not being able to achieve in the way that you want, right? Resentment could be on both sides of the equation as well. And then another one is just that fundamental question, like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know what I like anymore. I don't even know what I want anymore." Like my hobbies, my interests, all the things that I used to like, now as I think about doing those things, like they don't interest me anymore, but I don't know what else would interest me, right? Those are all tend to be signs that I'm hearing that are saying, "Okay, it's time we gotta stop here for a moment, and we gotta actually identify and re-identify really who you are and what you want in this next season of life."
And I feel like it also changes a lot, right? Like, you might want that for a short time, and then maybe, like, it changes. I feel like for me, it
Yeah.
changes daily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's like big picture change and then there's like micro change, right? Like, and we always sort of, as we start to talk a little bit about, how do you navigate through this identity crisis, right? We have to start sort of big picture and to give ourselves some sense of direction and then come into the micro and say, well, what does that mean about this season of life or this today? What does it mean about today or the next few months or the next year? Or whatever it might be, right? We just really want to make sure your decisions that you're making for today and for life, they sort of ladder up to a larger vision of what you want, who you want to be, what your goals are. Like that's when we're knowing that you're not going to leave any room for regret in life as you make decisions for how you want to prioritize and what you want to prioritize.
Would you be able to share a little bit about how moms can reclaim or redefine their identity while they're still embracing this role, their new role as mothers, parents?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of really key points. And so the first one I like to talk about is clarity. If you don't have a sense of clarity in terms of what you want, like a definition of what you want and where you're going and some of those bigger types of thoughts and goals and dreams and vision, then like it's like you're getting in a car every day and you kind of have a sense of the direction that you're supposed to go, but you're not really sure. And so you just find yourself wandering around without a roadmap, without a sense of actual destination in mind. That's very frustrating. It's very inefficient, right? We lose a lot of time. We regret a lot when we do that. And so we have to actually define some semblance of an end destination. That's the sort of the clarity process. And there's a couple of things that are involved in that. I think there's a couple of really important conversations around clarity, like what do you need to get specific on um, that needs to happen in order to navigate this season really well. The first is is answering the question, what do I want out of my career path right now? What do I want out of my job path, right? You need to feel like the path that you're on, if you are working, is a path that feels good to you. It feels like it is meeting the kind of success goals that you have in that area of life. And so really answering that question, do I want to be working and do I want to be doing what I'm doing now? And if not, what do I want to be doing? Is going to be a really important clarity process to go down. So, career is one big one. Another one is what I like to think of as just your definition of success. I think after motherhood, our definitions of success change pretty dramatically. Before it was fairly singularly focused in terms of career path, in terms of job, in terms of our kind of personal happiness, potentially with a partner and so forth. But after motherhood, it also becomes about being a really great parent, however you decide to define that, and doing right by your kids, right? And so our goals after motherhood sort of become twofold. They become about, potentially career path, but like our own personal happiness. And it also becomes around being a good mom and doing well by our kids. And so when one of these things is not feeling successful, I find that neither one of them feels successful. We have to feel success in both areas of life, in both of these areas in order to kind of get to the end of it and say, yeah, I did well, I did right, I did exactly what I wanted to do. I don't have any regrets around that, right? So defining sort of success that has both the areas, career and personal happiness and motherhood as kind of one cohesive goal is really a different way to think about it and important to put some clarity to that as well. And then I think the last one, and I already hinted at this on some level, but putting some words to like, what does it mean to be a great mom? Like if you imagine yourself, sending your last kid off through high school graduation and into college, and you felt so proud and you had no regrets and you feel like you raised your kids exactly the way you wanted to, like, what does that actually look like? Because there's so many ways to do that, right? You just get to decide what being a great parent means to you, and you get to decide what you want to value as a parent and what you want to instill in your kids. And if you don't pre-decide that, right, you're going to be feeling pretty lost in how to make decisions for being a great mom. So clarity for sure, this clarity path and putting a lot of definition to what is important to you, what your career is like, what being a great mom is like, what success really means to you, like that has to be a starting point and an anchoring point for you moving forward.
Can I have a minute? I have to go give her her pacifier.
Of course,
I'll be right back.
whatever you need.
Okay.
Could hear it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard to stay focused during that." So you did amazing.
Thank you. I was like, if only she could like pull the pacifier, put it in her mouth,
I
but she's
know.
not there yet. Okay.
She's not, and it'll still be a little bit. We had one of those pacifiers that, like, lays it has the animal connected to it, so at least it doesn't roll very far, right? She was still able sometimes to, like yeah, if it didn't go that way, like, she could still potentially find it.
Yeah, she's not. Sometimes she'll like kind of find it and then it's like, what is this? The little Edward scissor hands.
Yes, yes.
So going back to this, I would love if you could share some advice for moms who are feeling lost kind of in this day to day of just motherhood in general and really wanting to reconnect or find themselves, find this identity and figure out who they are.
Yeah. The first is really that recognizing like if you're hearing some of these if you've been asking yourself some of these questions that I'm raising and the who am I and what do I want and do I really want to be a stay-at-home mom and I don't even know what I like anymore, like if you're resonating with that, then this is a moment to pause. We live in a culture, particularly in America, where we don't value, unfortunately, as a culture, enough time post having our children, right? We used to have months and months and years, and there'd be such a village around us that would support us after having our baby, that would support us and our kids and so forth. And we don't live in that society anymore. And so there used to be space, I think, for women to explore a lot more than there is today, which means that we have to actually give ourselves that space, right? It is a time to literally pause and to say, I think I'm going to answer these questions. Like they're not esoteric questions. They're not rhetorical questions. They're questions that your brain is asking for some direction. They're asking for an answer so that you can know what you should be prioritizing right now and what feels right and what's going to leave you with no regrets, right? It's kind of stopping for a moment and identifying like I think my brain is feeling pretty lost in some of these things, and these questions are answerable. Like these are meant to be answered for us. And so pausing long enough, and that's not just like a one-time pause for 30 minutes or something like that. It's likely I'm when I say pause, I mean like be in a season of really figuring this out for yourself and getting the support that you need to figure it out. And so answering some of these questions, what do I want out of my career? What sort of lights me up? What's most important to me? How do I want to define, being a great mom? How do I want to define success? Like finding some space to actually sit down and think about these things and journal about them and talk to friends about them. Talk to moms that are in seasons that are a little bit older than your kids, right? To find the wisdom from other moms, to hire a coach to help you answer some of these questions, right? There's so many ways to potentially go find those answers, but you have to be in a season of willing to give yourself the space to explore, which also means that there has to be enough time and space in your mind to actually find answers to them, right? So the me time right now in the middle of an identity crisis is really, really important to find and to keep. And I guarantee no matter what your circumstances are, there's opportunity for you to take some space to sit and to think, not to sit and fold laundry, not to sit and reorg that closet, not to sit and answer more emails, not to sit and even talk to your mom on the phone, but sit and to kind of reconnect with who you are at a much, much deeper level. For me, when I was going through this season, I would say this kind of crisis moment for me was probably a good year from the moment that I sort of identified, like, oh my gosh, I'm swirling in questions that I don't have answers to. And it feels so confusing and I feel so lost and I feel so disconnected, right? It was about a year until I think I really found some footing in it. And I read several books during that time. Several of them were kind of workbooky, like answering questions around my values, answering questions around my identity. I was in a couple of really intentional groups where we were asking some of these questions of each other. I was being very thoughtful, prayerful in my reflection time, my time with God, things like that. And so I gave a lot of space and time to sort of sort through and get to the other side of answering a lot of these questions so that by the time I would say this season sort of ended, I felt so clear that it was time to leave my job. It was no longer aligned with who I wanted to be. I felt clear on my goals. I found coaching during that time. I started to explore what certification was at that time. I asked for a change of hours at work. Like so many things like became a snowball effect of me getting clear. After that season, it got so much easier for me to align a lot of my priorities and boundaries and things like that after that time. And so really giving yourself the time and the space to reflect, get the support that you need to be able to answer those questions. That's going to be you're going to be feeling miles I was going to say you're going to be miles ahead of others. Not really miles ahead of others. You're going to feel widely different when you allow yourself that space to do that.
Yeah, so true, and especially if you also have that a supportive partner at home that is encouraging you to find that. Obviously, everyone's circumstances is different, but so many
And
good
sometimes
points.
that person can help you answer some of these, and I know for a lot of women, they're not the right the partner is just not the right person. They need girlfriends or they need, like, a third party that has no vested interest in any of it, right? They need something other than that. It each to your point, like, each to their own, like, if you engage in your partner in that or don't, I don't think there's a right or wrong to it at all. This is really just about taking space that feels really supportive and nourishing for you.
Well, my last question, do you have any other tips, suggestions, or recommendations? I feel like a lot of what you shared has been so helpful, especially with answering some of those questions and trying to take time to reflect. Like, who do you want to be? What direction do you want to head in?
Yeah. I think that the last thing I will say about it is that you could possibly, if it feels right to you, give yourself a sort of container amount of time to do some of this reflection. Sometimes these things can feel so endless in our mind, and we can kind of always be circling around and thinking. Containers of time are really helpful to our brain to like give ourselves like an end space. It's like for the next 3 months, I'm just going to allow myself to ponder these questions, to reflect on these questions, to come up with some answers to these questions. And at the end of 3 months, then I'm going to make some decisions about what any of this means, right? So not jumping to that space of decision making too fast and allowing like a container of space to actually do true reflection and kind of go to those deeper levels can be really nourishing for ourselves, can feel really good to ourselves. It's one of the reasons why, for example, one of my group coaching containers, just 3 months, because I just say, I want you to give yourself 3 months to do this. You don't need more time than this, but by the end of 3 months, like the goal is to have made some decisions around this. And so I encourage that instead of it feeling endless, which can be really daunting and overwhelming to our brain.
And there's no more space for all the stuff that is already taking
Yeah.
taking up
Yeah, yeah.
space in our
I
brain.
mean, because you're also probably thinking, how do I get back into workout routines? And how do I find time for my marriage? And how do I keep a house clean? There's all these other things that you wish could be better in life, right? And then you want to get back into rhythms. And we can't always do all of those things and work towards all of those things at the same time. Sometimes, like giving ourselves that container, like, this is the season I'm going to do this, and I'm going to really figure out how to answer these questions. Or this is the season I'm going to really figure out when I get to work out and what does that look like for me and what my body can handle. And I'm going to trial and error that, right? I'm going to problem solve for that, right? And various areas of life, right? So that container can be really helpful to go like one goal at a time.
Yes, and not to be overwhelmed that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time. I'm going to have all of your information linked in the show notes for anyone that wants to connect with you. Yeah, thank you again.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure to be here and to be supporting all the moms out there. I love it.
Okay.